For the island, I did the Keeper's Village, and this one I started. I think it was Reddit Charters who did the beginning, the first sketches. And actually, I'm pretty happy because I tried to incorporate it. Like when we talked about the island and jungle and thunder and everything, I tried to see how can you make something unique and memorable. And that's why, for example, you can see on the initial concept sketch, there is no like the serpent head, dragon head on the mountain. And that was something I added because I felt that it would make the location a little bit more unique. And on this one, I tried, get all the tropes from old Indiana Jones movies and other, classic adventure jungle. And that's why you have the leaf trap, you have the opening leaves, and then the blow gun kind of, blow darts trap. So those were the things on this one that were I'm particularly fond of. It's a smaller scale, not the vehicle, but I think it has enough soul there for satisfy me and hopefully everyone who actually got it and played with it. For Seabound, I did the water dragon, Nia's form, and actually it was the sad thing with this one was that it fell right on the COVID outbreak. It was like on there. I had to finalize it at home. I had to have colleagues bring me bricks, make a list and request those. So it was a little bit of a rough landing on this one. But I'm really happy we tried to do something for Nia. We know that we don't have that much for her. We haven't done that much for her, but this was a good opportunity of doing something very, very different than what we tend to do. We've done dragons, but nothing like this, I believe. And I tried, to get a different, flapping function. It's not as good as it could have been if, again, we weren't constrained by higher powers. But I still believe that it's a good one, and I really like how the design ended up being. And we wanted to go for the water serpent, of course, because it was water themed. So that's why the length is massive. It's very thin but very long to get that kind of serpentine and more flowy kind of approach to it. And you play with the colors. You say, okay, try the azure, and then the azure is too much, and you try to add a lot of the colors that you need also for a good building experience. You cannot just do everything one color because you would just spend an eternity trying to get the the elements. So that was the main thing there.
So I designed the Hydro Mech, which actually is based on a really old concept that I built a very long time ago, because the underwater concept has been tested so many times that I built several concepts for it, and one of them was an underwater mech for Kai specifically, and it had a chainsaw for one arm and had small torpedo launchers in the shoulders, and it kind of got turned more and more into a crab, as people thought it would be fun if our red mech would be a crab. And then as time progressed, we ended up kind of green lighting the underwater theme direction, and we started working on it. It became smaller because we were looking for smaller price points to fit inside that kind of line of products. And then it made sense to make it a Lloyd mech from a marketing point of view. I don't know exactly why it ended up being Lloyd, which kind of still works because some crabs are green. So we kind of carried that aesthetic over, and we kept the claw. We kept the claw hand, and we switched to sword because it was kind of a very Lloydish weapon to have, just a classic katana. And from that point on, we also tried making sure it was as buildable as possible for the younger age mark, because this line had a lot of like high price point items, like the water dragon, the Temple of the Endless Sea, and the Hydro Bounty. Those are all quite large sets. We needed to make sure there was an entry level set as well for younger kids and for smaller price points. So ended up making it $20 7+ model to make sure that we have like a good breadth of different kind of target audiences with these sets, which is why it's built in a very different way from how I would normally build my mechs. Like, it's very much just a plate, and then there's some like connectors on the side that allow you to really easily snap the shoulders onto. So there's no complicated locking mechanisms or anything. It's very skeletal, and then I use a lot of large pieces to kind of clad it with to make sure that it still looks on par with our other Ninjago sets. So the Hydro bounty is a really interesting one because it was definitely super excited to get to work on one of the bounties because it's always, like Dimi said in his interview, it's always kind of like an honor to get to make a bounty. It's definitely a very weird one to make because for the longest time we weren't sure if it was going to be a bounty or not. As far as terminology goes, like it was called Sword of the Sea for most of its development, and then it was going to be something that was going to drop out of the bottom of the bounty, which is why the bottom of it is dark tan because it was supposed to be the wood that was showing from the ship that it got dropped out of. Didn't end up working out that way, and ended up just being a whole different ship altogether. But what was really fun about it was kind of trying to do all the things that a regular bounty does, while also giving it a super like underwater twist and a, kind of a sci-fi elegant direction. We really wanted to evoke that like kind of almost steampunky underwater fancy, almost Jules Verne direction of design for it with all the gold and the white and the blue. And we tried adding a bunch of different colors to it, like a black or a yellow. There's still some yellow on the interior here and there, but ended up not having any accent color at all, just focusing on the black, the white, the gold, and then the transparent blue, which I think actually ended up working out quite well because it is a cool team vehicle color scheme. The function was like a pain to figure out, and this is during the first lockdown in Denmark. So I was building this in my kitchen with like just random Lego sets that I had built. So whenever I was looking for a piece, I was trying to remember if I put it in the Lego, if I bought a Lego set recently that had it in it, because if I needed it and I didn't bring it from work, then I needed to wait a whole day or whatever to get it from work and then come back in again, because we were mostly working from home, only really going into the office to pick pieces up or drop things off for testing. But yeah, I would just go on Brickset and just like look for a piece and see which sets does it come in, and then see if I had any of those sets laying around, and then start just digging around in them. And I had a lot of the Batman movie sets, so those were very helpful. So I have a lot of like partially disassembled Batman movie sets just in a box somewhere in my storage locker now, which is great. But that storage locker also holds a prototype version of Hydro Bounty built in just like crazy colors because I just built it with whatever color pieces I had, right? It was mostly about figuring out the mechanical parts of it. So yeah, when I actually moved that stuff into the storage locker, that hadn't come out yet. So I was like, oh, this is kind of funny. There's just this weird relic here in this storage locker that nobody will understand if they find it. Yeah, so the function was super fun to figure out, but also a pain because we don't normally use string a lot because it's not super reliable. So I needed to make sure that any point where I could potentially pinch, it was rounded off, and at any point where I could potentially get stuck, it was like properly smoothed out so that it wouldn't get caught anywhere. And I built it with string specifically because it meant that we had a lot of space for storage and for making sure that the interior, even though it's entirely empty, could be entirely empty, so we could put the submarines in there. And when you don't, you could put all your minifigures in there. And it was actually made in such. One of my design brief things was all the accessories, so all the harpoon guns and all the katanas and all the helmets and all the wigs needed to have a spot inside of the model properly. When you're working with just an 8-module wide tube, small module walls on the sides, and then like submarines that are 4 modules wide that go in there, that gives you very little space to work with. So I'm very happy that it worked out, but it's quite fiddly. There's like a lot of clips on the inside you can put weapons in, and it technically checks out, but it is a little bit fiddly to put back in. And then, of course, for the nose, we tried looking for a bunch of different things to do. And it's kind of like a hard space to utilize because it tapers towards the middle, and we didn't have a good one-piece solution that would do that. So I thought if I'm going to be building it out of multiple pieces, I might as well make it something fun. So I came up with the idea to make it into a mech, which was an idea that came after the show things were already finalized. So at that point, I had only built a face on the front when we sent it off to the show, and we were like, we'd like to be a mech, but we don't know if we can pull it off. So they didn't end up using it in any kind of story significance. But I think as a toy for kids, it's great.